all your followers. So it's mostly constituents.
I'm not lying.
You are.
Hi, everyone. This is Gwen Moore, and I am speaking to the many constituents, non-constituents, followers on my Instagram about what's going on in Washington, D.C. From my perspective, we are having there's an existential threat to our democratic process, and it is really something that is being initiated by the presence of Elon Musk, who has gone to the Secretary of Treasury and demanded access to all of our private data. That would be Social Security numbers, tax information, Social Security, Medicare information on the individual side, and also information related to programs that have been funded, disbursement amounts. They literally have gained access and control to about $6 trillion in government spending information. We have people like, this has been reported in the New York Times as well as Wired, a young man named Marco Ilez. I'm sure you've never heard of him. He's a 25-year-old engineer. He's a coder, and he writes codes. And what we're understanding is that not only have they extracted this information, but Mr. Ilez also has the capacity and ability and is changing the codes. And without my having, specific information or background on this, my suspicion, our guess is they have a backdoor approach to be able to put it on any of their laptops and to be able to maneuver numbers, change the amounts that programs were granted, to wipe them out, to change percentages for individuals as well as for the beneficiaries of programs that have been written into legislation. What most of you want to know is, what in the heck is your congressman, your senator doing about it? Well, I can tell you, I'm a Democrat, so unfortunately, and I'll get to the fortunate part in a minute, unfortunately, that means that I'm in the minority by a couple of people in the House of Representatives. We are in the minority in the United States Senate, and President Donald Trump is in charge of the government. What is also unfortunate is that it's a principle, it is statutory, it is in law, that as a member of Congress, I do not have standing in court. I can't go to court and say, I voted for Head Start, that Head Start was passed, that appropriation was passed in the House of Representatives, passed in the United States Senate, signed into law, and now I feel that my rights as a legislator have been infringed upon. The court has ruled time and again that I do not have standing. But the good news is that you have standing. You, as an aggrieved party, as a person who's trying to run a Head Start program that, now may not be funded, you, as a federal employee who's been told that you now have to leave or take a buyout or else be fired, you have standing. And so we have numbers of organizations that have already, and I'm going to look at just a few of them here, but this information is available. Is there any way for us to put this on our Instagram. We'll put it on. Litigation Tracker, the legal challenges to the Trump administration actions. It was Tracker was first published on January 29th, and it's being continually updated. So I'm going to give you the email address so that it is numeral 1, T as in Tom, E, at justsecurity.org. That's the numeral 1, T as in Tom, E as in everything, at justsecurity.org. And we want to thank the editors for doing this. We have complaints on immigration and citizenship that have been filed. The New Hampshire Indonesian Community Support versus Donald Trump. Brazilian Worker Center versus Donald Trump. The state of New Jersey. CASA versus Donald Trump. All of these lawsuits are directed at challenging his birthright citizenship ban. And as you may know, there is currently a court injunction against enforcing the birthright citizenship ban. So if your baby is born today, we think that they are covered by that injunction. We also see that there has been lawsuits against the Trump administration executive order directing the Department of Homeland Security to cease operation of the CBP-1 app, which was created by the Biden administration to enable asylum seekers to schedule appointments to request asylum. There has been lawsuits by the Amicus Center for Immigrant Rights regarding Congress's appropriated funds for 2 immigration programs, the Legal Orientation Program and the Immigration Court Help Desk. We also have, as I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, we have groups of employees, the National Treasure Employees Union versus Donald Trump, which is an executive order authorizing the Director of Office Personnel to reclassify thousands of members of the civil service and strip them of their civil service protections, enabling presidents or heads of agencies to fire them. So they sued to block implementation on behalf of the union's members. And of course, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility versus Donald Trump. AFSCME, of which I'm a member, the American Federation of Government Employees, AFG, the AFL-CIO also have weighed in. And so this would be a good time, I think, to pay your dues in these organizations and to be active in your unions, because you have standing in court and I do not. We also have lawsuits regarding the American Public Health Association. I'm just reading a few of these, who's talked about Trump's executive order to rename the U.S. Digital Services as the U.S. DOGE Service, the Department of Government Efficiency. This is a department that absolutely was not created by Congress at all. Unlike, say, USAID, which was created by Congress and funded by it. There are also efforts. The complainant is called Jane Doe's Office of Personnel Management. The Office of Personnel Management announced it is testing a new system to email all civilian federal employees from a single email address, hr@opm.gov. So individuals claiming to be from the Office of Personnel Management posted online that the emails were being stored in an unsecured server at OPM. So the plaintiffs and employees of executive branch agencies who received the test emails requesting information sued. Again, none of these people have security clearances that we're aware of, have gone through the Senate approval, and they just burst in and are in charge of all this information. The National Council of Nonprofits. You know, if you're part of a nonprofit agency, hospitals, for example, I mean, there are efforts that we see afoot to deny hospitals their nonprofit status. And I have heard that there are many very profitable hospitals, many rich hospitals. But if you live in my community, that's probably not the case. And there are things that are only paid for by contributions to behavioral health, space, other sorts of programs that hospitals do that Medicaid and Medicare don't pay for. These would be the programs that would be at risk. So the National Council of Nonprofits versus the Office of Management and Budget issued a memorandum purported to require every federal agency to temporarily pause any agency activities that may be implicated by President Trump's executive orders. So these affect, they're represented by Democracy Forward. There's small businesses and nonprofits that receive federal funds. So this suit brought a temporary restraining order to allow the court an opportunity to more fully consider the illegality of OMB's suits. There are, Trump's executive order mandating that federal inmates be housed according to sex, defined as immutable biological classifications regardless of gender identity. This is Maria Mo versus Donald Trump. Doe versus McHenry. We have numbers of lawsuits related to that, to the transgender orders. The National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education versus Donald Trump. This is a lawsuit, was filed February 3rd, assisted by the Attorney General and OPM to terminate DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and related grants, equity grants and contracts, requiring every executive agency to identify up to 9 corporations or nonprofit entities or associations to target civil investigations to deter DEI programs. The Doctors of America versus the Office of Personnel Management. So, agencies within the Department of Health and Human Services, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Food and Drug Administration, removed health-related data and other information from publicly health data and other information. And so they're being challenged on collecting private data. So, and of course, anybody who was even remotely related to the January 6th attacks will, of course, be fired. There's a lawsuit by John and Jane Doe's versus the Department of Justice. So the legal framework is extremely important, and we are so grateful. I can only sort of reframe what President Abraham Lincoln once said, is, but for public sentiment, nothing can be done. Nothing good or bad can happen. And so this is really, it's nation time, y'all. It's democracy time. For those of you who cautioned us that, democracy and losing democracy was not a thing, just let me reiterate that democracy is what is on the line. Your personal information, your financial information, your health information is on the line. And what are they doing with it? We don't know. We have absolutely no idea. So I want to encourage you all to keep the faith, and to encourage you that you do have power. Now, legislatively, the Democrats in the House have as our leader the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries. And so we are only two people in the minority. So we're going to continue to try to convince, 2 or 3 of our members to come and join us on legislation that would stop the defunding and interference with our appropriations process. And also, we're not powerless, because I think that a time will be coming. We don't want to be just performative. We want to be effective. Well, we can deny them the votes that they need to increase the debt limit, because we know they want to increase the debt limit because they want to pay out $4.6 trillion in tax cuts to the wealthy. So we can deny them the votes for that because they have members that don't want to vote on that. We can deny them continuing resolutions. We can deny them the chance to pass their appropriations bills. If they just have 2 or 3 members that don't want to pass a bill for whatever reason, they don't like the debt, or they don't like certain things that are in it, we have the ability as a Democratic caucus to interfere with their plans to legislate around here, because we don't feel that we have the appropriate control. So I think that, we've sort of hit 3 areas that I think are very important, and I just want to review it again. I think there's legislative things that we can do, and I can tell you I'm working day and night to do that. I'm going to use every opportunity in Ways and Means Committee, on the floor, to be able to defy their legislation and their actions. One of the things, as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, I can tell you that I am promising to continue to push the Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Code, which firmly establishes that nobody can just go in and get information about people's taxes, tax obligations, without the appropriate legal framework. I can speak for the entire Ways and Means Committee on the Democratic side that we are just outraged by this. If you can remember, Donald Trump himself was enraged when 6103 was penetrated. People got indicted. When they supplied information to our newspapers and printed information about Donald Trump's tax returns, because that's inappropriate. Even if it were Donald Trump, even no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, whether you voted for him or liked him or not, it is inappropriate for anybody to take Donald Trump's tax information and make it public. And it's also inappropriate for them to do that to you. And so we're going to continue from my well of opportunity to focus on that provision of 6103, which I do have some say over. So legislatively, we're going to fight back. Litigation, we do not have standing, but I can tell you that I support these lawsuits. I am not able, as a member of Congress, to claim that I'm the injured person. The injured people are people who won't get Medicaid funding. I don't receive Medicaid funding. Those injured people, you are the injured party. And so you should show up. I would encourage each of you to write letters. I love your letters, but you should write them to Senator Johnson. He's the person in our state. You know, Mr. Tiffany, who's not in this issue, write to Senator Johnson, and don't send one of these group letters. Write your own letter, no matter how literate you think you are or are not. Say, my kids are in Head Start. I desperately need this funding. I'm working as hard as I can. I need my kids to have this child care. That's a great letter right there. Sign your name and address. Send it to Senator Johnson. Senator Baldwin is doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing. Send it to, if you can hear me, Brian Stile, who's the chairman of the House on Administration, supposed to be making this place run right. Send this to, my phones are blowing up. I welcome your phone calls. Call Senator Johnson. Call him as well. Okay, so is there, can you read some of these comments and tell me what I ought to be talking about now? I can't see from this distance.
Yeah. People are expressing that when they have written to Senator Johnson, they often don't get a response. And that can be dejected. And a lot of people are saying, thank you for what you're doing. People have largely also been asking in Congress what Democrats can do. And I think you addressed that a little bit with the preventing continuing resolutions.
Litigation, legislation.
Yeah.
Right. Well, listen, I don't want you to get discouraged writing Senator Johnson. That is one of the comments that we've gotten. He's not very responsive, and he just got reelected. So he feels like he's not accountable to any of you all since he just got reelected narrowly, by the way, to have been an incumbent. We'll have to fix that, but that's a different conversation. Right now, I think it's important because just like Abraham Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. If Senator Johnson knew that there were a whole lot of people that didn't want $2.5 trillion cut out of Medicaid to fund Elon Musk, if he knew that, he would think twice or three times before he voted on it. Let me just tell you something about Medicaid. Medicaid pays for the care that your grandmother is getting at the nursing home. Yes, Medicare pays for some of it, but staffing, numbers of things that are paid for by Medicaid will be disrupted or will end. Now, they can't, if your grandma is in the nursing home, how will this affect her care? I think if Medicaid funds are cut, we're going to see more the dearth of funding such that the care will not be that great. I've had relatives in a nursing home. I've complained about my loved one sitting in their waste and filth for 8 hours, and they tell me quickly, this is a nursing home. That is not an emergency. And the staffing shortages are going to be greater if, in fact, there's no way to pay people wages to come to work. So it's not just, kids in WIC. It's your elders that are at risk. With regard to what we are doing here as a Democratic caucus, the thing that we can do best of all is to stick together. Again, they have a very small margin. This notion, when you hear President Trump say he has a mandate, that's a lie. The elections were very, very close. I know in Wisconsin, it is like 1.5% difference in the votes out of Wisconsin. I'm very proud of our voters and their performance in November 2024. Even though we were disappointed with the results, people showed up. And I just want to thank you for that. But now is not the time to stop showing up. We have to show up. And like I said, it's time to get more involved with your union. I'm going to pay my NAACP dues, your ACL dues. Now it's time to organize with your PTA, because I've been visited by superintendents of schools who are concerned about the Department of Education being defunded, about the Title I funding being disrupted. And so you are connected. Being connected is the most important way to fight back against these billionaires who are now in charge of the government. They're in charge of the military. They're in charge of appropriations. And this is very disconcerting. As I said when I started this, from my perspective, this is an insurrection. The only thing that hasn't happened so far is that the Confederate flag has not been dragged through the rotunda. That's the only thing that hasn't happened. And I appreciate this time with you. And, keep on being active. Keep on keeping on. Because that's exactly what I'm going to do. I have never been so fired up and ready to fight as I am now. As discouraged as I have been, I am encouraged, by the people who have weighed in and brought lawsuits. The personal safety, because some of these people are actually working in federal government. In every aspect of our government is under attack. The United States Postal Service is not going to provide packages from China now because of the trade wars. Everybody's affected. The farmers, we don't have many farms in Milwaukee, but outside of our jurisdiction are farms. Farmers are going to be harmed. And the president has promised us that the pain, he says that there will be pain, but he just didn't tell us how much pain it would be. Trust me, it's going to affect your bottom line because they're attacking the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They're attacking Medicaid. They're attacking your hospital. And if you're one of those people who thinks, well, I'm not poor, this doesn't affect me,